Our next speaker is Luis Fernandes, and he was the Minister for Science, Technology and Innovation under Lula and Dilma. He is a professor at the International Relations Institute and the Brics Policy Center of the Pontifical Catholic University of Rio de Janeiro, as well as adjunct professor at the Federal University of Rio. He has a PhD and master's degree in political science from the Instituto Universitário de Pesquisas de Rio de Janeiro and a Bachelor of Science in Foreign Services degree from Georgetown University in the USA. His research covers topics related to the political economy of international relations, with special emphasis on development and innovation, and power shifts in the international order. He has been designated to different government positions over the past 2 decades, including those of Deputy Minister for Science and Technology, President of the Brazilian Innovation Agency, Scientific Director of the Rio State Foundation for the Endowment of Research, Special Advisor to the Minister of Defense and Deputy Minister for Sports, where he served as the government's executive coordinator for the preparation and organization of the 2014 World Cup and the 2016 Olympic and Paralympic Games. So Luis Fernandes, great welcome to you. Please speak.
Well, I'd like to thank the organizers for the invitation. We are 2 weeks away from the election, and the title of our panel is The Meaning of Lula's Return. Now, there's a saying in Portuguese which runs that you shouldn't chant victory before the game's over. So we're still playing the game, and we have to guarantee Lula's return. And this involves 2 dimensions. One is the electoral dimension. We still haven't won the elections. As was mentioned before, Lula is well positioned in all opinion polls, electoral opinion polls, and there is a possibility that he might win the election in the first round. But even if he goes on to the second round, what the opinion polls show is that he's very well and favorably positioned. But we have to play the game all the way to the end. We still have to win the elections to guarantee his return. But there's a second dimension to his return, which I think is very important to our international audience, and where international solidarity may play a very important role. Because President Bolsonaro has already set a Trump-like roadmap. He has been questioning Brazilian electoral system, specifically the electronic voting system we adopt in Brazil, which is very advanced and has never been frauded, or there's no proof of any fraud of this electoral system. But following Trump's footsteps, he has been openly questioning the Brazilian electoral system. And his intent is clearly not to recognize the electoral results in case he loses, as it seems will happen. So this is a second dimension of the struggle for Lula's return to power, which is we have to guarantee that the electoral results, if Lula wins, are respected. And international solidarity is very important in that realm. So this is an appeal for all of you in other countries to follow political events in Brazil and have a very strong position in defense of democracy and in defense of the recognition of the electoral results if Lula wins, as seems to be the case. Now, addressing the title of our panel, The Meaning of Lula's Return to Power, I will address that briefly concentrate in a few topics, and I think in the Q&A period, we could delve deeper into those topics. If Lula does win the election and his election is recognized and he takes office, that will represent a major shift in Brazil's foreign policy. And in particular, it will represent the rebuilding of an axis of support for progressive and democratic change in South America and in Latin America. I think we had recent very important progressive victories in elections in Latin America, specifically in Colombia and Chile. New tide, a new wave of progressive change in which Brazil as a central actor, a very strong actor in South America and Latin America, can spur that change. And I think that will be very important for the world. In terms of foreign policy change, I think we will witness in the new Lula government a renewed priority given to South American and Latin American integration. I heard the comment from our Chinese colleague, but I can guarantee him that Mercosur will be strengthened in a Lula government. It will not be weakened. And that involves our common tariff policy, which is part of our economic integration process in Mercosur. So I think that's a very strong point of foreign policy that will be adopted by the new Lula administration if we guarantee his election and his coming to power. A second foreign policy change, which will be very important, and it involves China, is that the Brazilian government under Lula's return will once again value very strongly multipolarization changes that are taking place in the world. And the Brics initiative will acquire once again centrality in Brazil's foreign policy. I think that will be for sure a very strong point of our foreign policy with Lula's return to power. I must say that I'm not much in agreement with the characterization of these political changes in Latin America and with the confirmation of Lula's return to power as a pink wave, because the image of a pink wave refers to European social democratic experiences in the 90s and early 21st century, where the policies adopted were neoliberal policies and the foreign policies adopted were imperialist foreign policies. I think Lula's return to power will represent a non-alignment with imperialist Western powers' foreign policies. So it's a substantive change. It's not a pink wave. I would not use that characterization. And at the same time, not only non-alignment, but very strong opposition to Western imperialist interventionism in international relations and into world order. So I would not characterize it as a pink wave or a pink experience. I think it's a very substantive, progressive, democratic experience, which should be strongly supported, in my view, by progressives throughout the world. Now, I know my time's running out, so I'd like to address one second point, which I think might be interesting and important for our discussion. And that is the fact that the historical context of Lula's return to power in 2023 and his election in 2022 will be significantly different than his election in 2002 and his coming to power in 2003. In 2002, he represented basically a criticism, a political criticism, and a political alternative to the neoliberal policies implemented in Brazil in the 90s after the transition to democracy, and the attempt to build an alternative development path for Brazil in relation to our inheritance of neoliberal policies from the 90s. We were only partially successful in that, I must say, but that was the thrust of his election in 2002 and the government that took office in 2003. In 2022, the meaning of his election is the defeat of an ultra-right movement, which in the vacuum of the coup, the judicial coup that was effected in Brazil, took power. So it's an extreme right, far right government with fascist tendencies, and not only a potential threat, but an opponent of democracy in Brazil. So his election today has the meaning of a defense of democracy in Brazil, a defeat of these far-right fascist movement, which has managed to gain strength in the country. So that has brought into the coalition forces which are aligned with neoliberal policies. That is true. It's a very broad coalition. It's a democratic front. We have 10 parties, political parties supporting Lula today, basically center-left parties. But we have a number of political leaders, centrist political leaders, and even defenders of neoliberal policies supporting Lula in this election. That's part of a democratic front strategy, which is key for his success, for him being elected, and for him taking office. But that signals to a very turbulent period in government, because he will be facing simultaneously attempts to destabilize his government coming from these defeated far-right fascist forces on the one hand, and he will be facing attempts to, I don't know how to say that in English, but try to control and limit the amount of change that his government may implement from the part of neoliberal forces which are supporting his election in 2022. So that means we will have a difficult period in government, and he will have to be a very able politician in maintaining his broad coalition together and bringing change to the country and structuring a new anti-neoliberal development strategy, while at the same time maintaining the political base he needs to govern the country and to defend democracy in the country. I'm sorry, I don't know if I passed my time, but I'd like to bring these topics into discussion, and maybe in the Q&A we can delve into them deeper. Thank you very much.
I'm Michael Hudson. I'm appearing here for the International Manifesto Group. If you like this video and ones like it, please subscribe. For more information, go to the address on this screen.